ways.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor now. Speaking to the motion, first Councillor Black and then Sonnenberg.
Well, you know, my heart and logic says that, yeah, this is no big deal, and go for it, allow it. Then I think back again with that heavy mantle of responsibility as a councillor representing so many people, and the liability issues. And it seems these days that, you know, liability is controlling us probably more than the province is with our decision making, because we're always having to look at liability and risk because people get hurt and they sue, and it costs us a lot of money. And I wasn't too happy, Mr. Chairman, when the staff, and it was as a result of an accident, an unfortunate death of a lady crossing West Street just up here down the road from Norfolk General Hospital to her parked car in Elmhurst, and she was unfortunately killed, and she was crossing an illegal crosswalk. And from that, staff advised, I think maybe it might have even been Mr. Cridlin there, to remove all of the crosswalks throughout Norfolk County, which we did. And people didn't understand it. I mean, downtown Simcoe, we had one over at Nova Scotia, Bank of Nova Scotia, TD Bank there, Norfolk Street North, by the Bank of Montreal, across there, remove that. People still walk across it. They still go across it. So this is a real dilemma for me. I was willing to take some risk and leave those crosswalks. So that's the dilemma, because we did remove them. So here we go talking about fairness again. What do? Then you have mixed rulings, I guess, from Norfolk County, that in one instance you do this, in another instance you do something different. So it's the dilemma I'm faced with.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sonnenberg, I guess you're next.
I happened to be in Hamilton this morning, sitting at a major intersection. Traffic going every which way. I think I saw no less than 6 handicapped people on scooters making their way through that traffic and across the crosswalks. Nobody seemed to bat an eye. It was just a fact of life that happens every day. It's the same with bicycles, it's the same with scooters, it's the same with people on rollerblades or, you know, any other mode of transportation. It's just an accepted fact these days. We already have it happening in Norfolk County on Culver Road. We've heard about it, these crosswalks being everywhere on the continent, I'm sure. I'm guessing Myrtle Beach must have 1,000 of them. So I'm going to support this. I'll take the risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see no further speakers. Mayor Luke, the one point of clarification, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you about with respect to your motion where you say mid-block crossings be permitted. The report references that 2 have been requested. Can we safely assume that's all that is being contemplated and being requested? And I'm seeing
I wondered about that, and I should have asked Mr. Lennox that, but it is 2, I believe,
he has
only.
confirmed that. Yep.
Well, let's put 2 in there. Sorry?
If you're agreeable, Mayor Luke, that would clarify it, I guess.
I'm agreeable that 2 mid-block crossings
Okay.
be permitted, and then that says 2.
Yep. Madam Deputy Clerk. Okay, any further final speakers to Mayor Luke's motion? If not, I will ask the Deputy Clerk just to read it to us one last time, please.
Thank you. Through the chair to committee, moved by Mayor Luke that staff report PW 1720 mid-block crossings in the in the Dover Coast Development be received as information, and that 2 mid-block crossings be permitted within the municipal right-of-way of the proposed Dover Coast Boulevard.
Thank you. Everyone's clear on the motion as presented. I will call the question. Those in favor? I see no one opposed to that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Lennox, for your deputation, and good luck with the continued development. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we will take I'm going to suggest a 25-minute break. We will start sharply at 7:30 with the balance of our agenda. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for getting back in the chambers. We're a minute or two before 7:30, but I think everyone's ready to go, so we will get back onto our agenda. Because we have some folks here for one of our staff reports, I'm going to ask Council's indulgence to allow us to deal with staff report FS 17-12. It's on page 75 of your agenda. And this is the approval of a contribution agreement with Parks Canada for restoration and preservation work at Linwood House. Mr. Baird, we'll turn that over to you. Oh, very good. Mr. Ford, please carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We spoke about this last week. Council asked, Councilor Black asked some information about this and where it was. And we had just at that time received the pre-certification report, which is a cornerstone of the contribution agreement, and we'd received a draft of the contribution agreement. There were a couple of issues with it, minor, but they still needed to be addressed. In the meantime, I wrote this report. Between writing the report and when it was on the agenda, the issues that we had in the contribution agreement that needed to be corrected have in fact been corrected. However, what's happened in the meantime, I guess the second meantime, is that we've received a notice from our program advisor that and I spoke to this last week as well, that we were waiting for confirmation of an extension for the completion of it until March 2018. I have received information today from our program advisor that still hasn't been approved by the what she refers to as the authorities. But what she has done is provided a revised contribution agreement, a draft revised contribution agreement that shows March 31st, 2018 as the completion date. And in emails back and forth, she's indicated to me she expects that that will be in our hands, the final approved contribution agreement with the change in date to March 31st, 2018. Should be in our hands by the time this comes back to council for ratification next week. So that's an update on the process. The report basically spells out what's going to happen, the renovations and who's paying what, and this is exactly the same as the application that council approved making application back in June of 2016. This is exactly the same thing. There's been no changes. Parks Canada is very happy with the what's been submitted. The funding is 50-50 between Parks Canada and Norfolk County, $276,500 in a grant of the $553,000 projected cost. And what we've proposed in the report is that the county's share of the cost be funded through the issuance of debentures. And as we always say, that if some other funding source becomes available before the project is completed, we may either reduce the amount of debentures to be issued or eliminate them completely. But at this point right now, we're suggesting it be funded that way. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about that, Mr. Chairman. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ford, for that report, and I do want to acknowledge our staff and committee folks from Norfolk Koch Centre that are here. Thank you very much, Deirdre, and your team for being here, and for the work that was done on this application. So I'll go to speakers now. Councillor Black first.
I'd like to move the recommendation in the report and speak to it.
Okay, please go ahead.
And yeah, it's been a long time coming. It's been difficult, and it's all being because of bureaucracy, and it's finally here. And I'd like to thank John for his input, all the work he's done, and Deidre and the committee. Of course, if you've been over to Linwood, the old Duncan Campbell landmark and his National Historic Site, it does need some tender loving care. The windows are deteriorating, the porch is deteriorating, some of the brick needs some work on it. I understand there's some tenants that have taken up residency illegally in the rafters or somewheres thereabouts, and they've tried the Residential Tenancy Act, but it just doesn't work. So I think they've called pest control, and I think maybe it's sort of worked. Anyway, it needs work, and it needs, and it's great that we're able to get 50% dollars on this. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Black, and I'll get to your motion in a moment. Councillor Columbus next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Parks Canada for their gift of $276,500. And I just wonder, it seems like every couple of years we're putting money into this building. Do we have a tally from the year when Norfolk County commenced operations? Do we have a tally how many dollars we've actually committed to this building?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that question off the top of my head, but we can certainly give you an email or a council information memo that tells you about what's been spent on that building over the years. What I can tell you is that, yes, we have spent some money on it. We have never spent anything of this magnitude. This is a major restoration project. I think it's fair to say that, as Councillor Black has pointed out, if some of these things aren't done, in a relatively short order, next year or two as a minimum, we're going to find that the cost is going to be a whole lot more than $553,000 because the building will deteriorate rapidly. But the whole idea is to get it back to the position that it was at. But we certainly will provide council with a summary of what's been spent over the years.
That'd be great. I'd like to see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Black again, please.
Yes, thank you, Jim Oliver. And if we're going to get a report on costs of this facility, why don't we get a cost on all the facilities? I mean, there's so many of our facilities are money pits. It's sort of the sense that I get from my fellow colleague over here is that this facility is a money pit. I mean, take a look around at some of the museums throughout Norfolk County or the arenas or whatever it may be. They're all money pits, some more than others. So I'm not so sure why we're picking on this facility and not having a look at all of them.
Okay, any further speakers? Councillor Sonnenberg.
I'll be supporting this, but it always amazes me how much things cost to fix. Give me $500,000 and I'll build you the most lavish house in Simcoe. And here we're just making some repairs for the same money. It's just amazing. Thank you.
Well, of course, Councillor, it is it's the heritage, and I know that's a question you don't need to have answered, but yeah. Councillor Columbus for a second time.
Well, to Councillor Black, I just asked a question that Councillor Black would normally ask. Thanks.
Okay, I think I have no more serious speakers, so are there any final comments? Councillor Black has offered to move the motion, and I will read it to you, and then if you have any final thoughts, you can certainly put those forward. Councillor Black has moved that report FS 17-12, the approval of the contribution agreement with Parks Canada for the restoration and preservation works at Linwood House be received, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the contribution agreement with Parks Canada for funding under the National Cost Sharing Program for Heritage Places, and further that the 2017 capital budget be amended to approve the Linwood House Restoration and Preservation Project in the amount of $553,000, and further that council authorize the issuance of debentures in the amount of 50% or $276,500 for a term not to exceed 5 years to provide the county's share of the project costs. Any final comments? Those in favor of that recommendation? I see no one opposed, so thank you very much for that. Okay, then let's, council, move back up, if we could, to staff report PW 17-18, award of contract PWE 17-60, Main Street Reconstruction Phase 3, Port Dover, page 63 of your agenda, and another good news report as far as I can tell. Ms. Robinson, please carry on.
Through the chairman to council, the report in front of you is the third and final phase of the Main Street reconstruction. This is a recommendation for award of the last phase of this project to Almus. And I'm pleased to report that it came in under budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wells. Then Mayor Luke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like to move this as quickly as possible before Ms. Robinson spends more money.
Okay, Mayor Luke, please.
Well, I'm going to support this because there's no golf carts crossings. No, I'm being silly. The one question I had, Lee, this is good news, but I'll be honest. I thought that the 6-month time frame is a little bit long. I mean, you know, we did so well in the downtown, and I know that there was a clause that if it's over schedule or under schedule, but I just thought that Main Street, it's not, I don't know how many blocks that is, I should have figured it out, but it's not like we did at the north end. Doesn't that seem like a long time? 6 months? 3 blocks? I don't know. Okay.
It's a substantial distance, and then addition to the side streets, and it's pretty complicated. We saved the best for last.
You see, I thought the best was done last year after July 1st. After Labor Day, pardon me.
Last year's was very complicated in the sense that we were working around certain dates and trying to schedule things. This is more technically difficult work.
Well, it's the last phase, so I know that we'll all be glad when it's finished, but certainly the quote, Mr. Chair, it is good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Councillor Black, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And through you to Lee, just wondering, who did the other 2 phases? Is this the same contractor that did the other 2? And does it matter if it's not the same?
I apologize. The first phase was done before I got here, and I don't remember the name of the contractor. Last year, it was not Almus, it was Navicon that did the work. And no, the phases were designed so that any contractor could bid on them. That was some of the instructions from council to ensure that we had good competitive bidding on a regular basis. Okay. And so we designed it specifically so that we wouldn't have any problems with the connections.
And do we have a total cost for all 3 phases?
I don't have that here with me this evening, but I can certainly provide it to council tomorrow.
Thank you. And rerouting traffic, it looks like it may be a little bit easier to reroute traffic in this instance. Would it be, do you have those rerouting routes designed yet?
Through the chairman to council, we do not have the exact routing routes fully defined at this point. We have preliminary routes, but one of the advantages is that we can get the contractor to work with us to minimize the amount of traffic disruptions. So we have an idea that it's possible. We just don't know the exact way it's going to turn out.
Just hopefully you don't have too many routes to pull up either.
Thank you, Councillor. Any final speakers on this report? Lee, I'm sure I speak for all of council when I say we're glad to see a local contractor like Almus successful in this bid. I don't recall, I don't know whether anyone does, who the contractor for phase 1 was, but I don't think it was a local Norfolk County business. No. So this is good news on a number of levels. Councillor Wells has moved that staff report PW 17-18, award of contract PWE 1760, Main Street Reconstruction Phase 3, Port Dover, be received as information, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the Mayor and Clerk Manager of Council Services to execute a contract with the firm of R.F. Almus Company Limited for this contract in the amount of $2,186,021.22, excluding taxes. Those in favor of that recommendation? I see no one opposed to it, so it is carried. Thank you. Staff report, PW 17-23, composting services for leaf and yard waste. Ms. Robinson, once again, please.
Through the chairman to council, the report before you this evening is in accordance with the purchasing policy. We are requesting to, I just want to make sure I use the right term, single source the composting services for the leaf and yard waste. This is not for the collection. This is actually for the company that does the actual composting, so where we take them. There is only one facility within a reasonable driving distance from Norfolk County that's able to do this. So we're seeking council's permission to single source to them so that we can get better cost pricing and make it more affordable for the municipality. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from any members of council on this report? Councillor Black?
Well, this has nothing to do with the frequency of pickup. It's just,
Correct. No. This is the location that it goes to after we pick it up.
okay. Well, I'd move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor. No further speakers. Then I will read the motion to you. Councillor Black has moved that this staff report, PW 17-23, composting services for leaf and yard waste be received as information, and that council exempt staff from the quotation and tendering procedures for goods and services outlined in our policy for a single source composting services contractor for leaf and yard waste. Those in favor of that recommendation? I see no one opposed, so it is carried. And the final report at the top of that section, staff report FS 17-13 on page 71 of your agenda, options for the allocation of legacy fund excess earnings. I think, Mr. Ford, back to you and through you to James. James, welcome, and please come forward and present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On February 14th at the council meeting, the following resolution was passed. Staff be directed to present potential infrastructure options for allocation of the $250,000 in funds from the legacy reserve, or sorry, the legacy funds. Council gave staff some guidance or some direction on what kind of projects to have on the list. They should include projects that are price sensitive to oil, as in anything that deals with paving or asphalt. The project should be unique and special. They do not, another option is to not use it at all and to keep it in our reserve. And then another option was social housing projects. I won't go over the list line by line. However, if there's any questions on any of those specific items, I would be happy to answer them, or perhaps the relevant department. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Mayor Luke first, and then Councillor Wells.
James, I wondered about two things on here. The recreation master plan for $50,000. I don't have a clue what that is. Do you know, through the chair?
Through the chair, I would be happy to have Chris Baird speak to that. Sorry, Mr. Cridlin.
Mr. Acting County Manager, Mr. Cridlin. Step back, Chris. Here, Bill.
Testing, yeah. Through the chair to Mayor Luke, yes. When putting this list together, the master plan does come to council on April 4th. So I realize councillors haven't had a look at it in detail. I think you have the gist of what's coming forward, but our recommendations in the master plan will be to move to the next step and do some investigations. And do we fix some of these older buildings up, or do we go with some more centralized buildings and multi-purpose things? So we could see a need that we're going to need some outside help pulling this together. It's going to be a big workload for present staff to do. So we thought, as the SLT group, maybe $50,000 seed money to this in anticipation that council does go that way, once they read the report, that this money would be needed and would help get this off the ground.
I think I know what that means. It bothered me, the word master plan, because we had 2015, it seems like 1915. 2015, Mr. Chair, we spent some 74,000 on a master recreation plan that was received by council, and we haven't acted on any of those recommendations, and I know, Bill, that you're well aware of that, and that was Mr. Galloway. So I think when we deal with April 4th, then that's the time to start to think about this 50,000. The other question I have is the downtown revitalization. Did this council not, Mr. Chair, at budget time, was it a secondary downtown plan we cut to 50,000? I don't know, my memory's not quite there, but I'm wondering if this is the same thing or something. We got so many studies, I can't keep track of them.
Just on that specific one, I recall it pretty clearly. I think staff had described that as a placeholder in our budget of $50,000. Should any recommendations have come out of the South Coast Business Coalition project, that is, we're waiting to see the results of, that we would have had some seed money to begin to allocate to any of the downtowns. Is that approximately correct, Mr. Baird, as to?
Mr. Chairman, there was indeed a downtown Simcoe, a secondary plan for $50,000 that was deferred, pushed back for future consideration. And there was a $100,000 placeholder, as you so mentioned, for all of the downtowns to be drawn upon. And in light of the discussions that have come forward since budget time, we just wanted to put it back out for council's consideration as a potential idea. But that's all it is.
I'm clear now. Thank you.
I think this is going to be tricky too, because everybody's going to have a different idea. So I don't know how you want to deal with it. I do have my three choices. If you just want me to state them or put it in a motion, or if it fails, then go on to something else.
Well, Councillor, if you don't mind a suggestion, why don't you go ahead and give us your comments and do it as a comment at this point rather than a recommendation. And
okay, well, I guess my commentary would be, looking at these, is trying to think of getting the biggest bang for your buck and something that's going to benefit as many Norfolk residents as possible, as many situations. To me, I did have an advantage, I guess, of speaking to Bill and Todd Shoemaker about the Recreation Master Plan. I did understand what the $50,000 was for, and I would support that. So that's one I would support. Certainly, I think you all know I would support the downtown revitalization, and that would leave $100,000 left, and I would support $100,000 towards surface treatment to increase the 2017 budget allocation to expand the surface treatment program. So those would be my three choices.
thank you very much for that, Councillor. Next speaker, Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I certainly had starred two items. Two of them, Councillor Black has already mentioned. The fund for the recreational master plan, I don't have a problem with that. And I would support $200,000 for the budget allocation to expand the surface treatment program. Almost every time at this council table, we continually hear that we need more money for roads. So I'm willing to make that a motion unless Mr. Black's, Councillor Black's motion supersedes that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't, Councillor, but in light of fairness, unless you object strongly, I'm going to allow his. If there are no other options. No, well, any further speakers, any other suggestions, or Councillor Columbus?
Yes, could we get a definition from Lee on surface treatment? Like slurry seal is a surface treatment, but I don't particularly care for that. So what does the meaning of that in here, this report?
Through the chairman to council, what we intended in this application would be tar and chip. Yes.
Okay, Councillor? All right. I think what I'm going to do, Council, is go back to Councillor Black and invite him to put his recommendation
You know,
forward. as a-
maybe it might be a little bit easier to do it this way. I don't know. But let me move a motion to approve the Recreation Master Plan only at this moment for $50,000.
Okay.
Just one at a time,
Can
and
do these
maybe,
one at a time, absolutely.
and rather than mixing them all up, because everybody will be all over the map.
Thank you for that. So we do have a motion on the table then to allocate $50,000 of this surplus funding out of the Legacy Fund revenue for last year towards furthering the Recreation Master Plan, basically implementation, if you like, further development and implementation. Is that captured, Councillor? Okay. Speaking to that motion, Councillor Columbus.
Question, does this include, like, the swimming pool, building an arena? Is that the thing that we're getting all the emails about? Is that what we're talking about here?
It could be, Councillor, but I think we really won't know until April the 4th when we have Mr. Cridland's report, and we as council will decide what we're interested in spending further time and effort on, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Any further speakers to this motion? Madam Deputy Clerk, you've got it? Okay, that's moved by Councillor Black. Those in favor of that motion? I see 3. Those opposed? I see 3. I'm going to vote in favor of that motion. All right, I'm open to further recommendations to come forth from council. Councillor Sonnenberg.
I would move we spend the rest on resurfacing. Thank you.
On road resurfacing as per surface treatment in the report. Okay, that's been moved then by Councillor Sonnenberg. Anyone wish to speak to that motion? I will call the question. Those in favor of that motion? I see 5. Those opposed? I see 1. That motion does carry. All right, Council, that's been pretty simple, actually, so thank you very much for that. Councillor Wells. We sure did. Okay, thank you very much to staff for bringing that report to us. It was challenging for you, but that certainly has given us some direction. We have 2 other reports, Council, on that section of our agenda. Staff report DCS 17-29 on page 109 of your agenda is the Norfolk Environmental Advisory Committee Terms of Reference revisions. I'll come back to that one. Sorry, Councillor, you're quite right. I'm going to jump down to this one first, and then we'll go back up. No, my apologies for having skipped it. Mr. Baird, can you help us out now on page 109?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, this is a bit of housekeeping that came about. NEAC is your Norfolk Environmental Advisory Committee, and they meet a number of times a year and review environmental impact and various development. It was identified that there was a need to change or provide some clarification on how attendees are able to speak or as a deputation or to speak to some of the discussion items. It was previously a 10-day notification. It's been recommended to move to 4 days, and which is more consistent with council's procedures. And so that change is made. If I could refer you to page 112, that's the start of the 1, 2, 3, 4, about 7 pages or 8 pages of the actual terms of reference. So that's the first change, is to change the 10-day notification period to 4 days. So that is changed. And then there's only another housekeeping matter that's under section 11.9. And that refers to, they're referring to the staff as the secretary when in fact they're referred to as staff liaison. So it's just a wording change there. And we think with those, it brings it into alignment with other terms of reference and tidies things up. So those are the changes there. There's also a deletion of 11.8, which refers to that deputation piece. That's been already captured. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baird. Any questions for staff regarding this report? Seeing not, is someone please prepared to move its approval? Thank you, Mayor Luke. Mayor Luke has moved that the staff report DCS 17-29 be received as information and that the revised terms of reference for the NEAC as attached to this report be approved. Those in favor? No one is opposed to that, so it does carry. Thank you very much. And thanks to Councillor Geisens, we'll now jump back up to staff report FS 17-10 on page 80 of your agenda, and this is the approval of transfer payment agreement with MTO for the bus stop improvements. Mr. Ford.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another report similar to the one that we talked about for funding from Parks Canada, but it's a little smaller dollar value, and it comes from the province, but it's still a 50-50 cost sharing. And this is to make a number of bus stop improvements throughout the Norfolk, Ride Norfolk bus circuit. The estimated cost is $116,000. That was provided by what's his name? Brad Smith. Yes. Thank you. By Brad Smith in terms of what would be needed, and that was submitted to the province under this particular cost sharing program, and they've agreed to fund 50% of it. Unlike the other one where we suggested it be funded from the developer, from the issue of debentures, this is a smaller dollar amount, and we would recommend that it's funded from the oh my God, my brain's gone on.
Contingency reserve?
The contingency reserve. My brain has gone into retirement mode. That it be funded from the contingency reserve. And please don't ask me any questions.
Thank you. We're with you, Mr. Ford. We all... Okay, there may be a few questions regarding this report. Councillor Columbus first.
Yeah, the question I have is, there's 26 of these, but what kind of improvements are we talking about here? Is it a shelter or
my understanding is, Mr. Chairman, that it's... oh, wait, Bill's going to answer this. Okay. Hey.
So through the chair to Councillor Columbus, yes, I had a good talk with Brad Smith this afternoon before I came in. He is looking at 6 bus shelters, which will be spread across the county under prioritized stops. And also there will be 19 areas that will receive benches only, not the shelters. And so it's benches, six shelters, 19 benches, and there's some minor signage improvements included in that.